Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and you have reached Venus Unplugged, your virtual heartbreak hotel. And what we are doing here is exploring all different aspects of the archetype of Venus. Because if we can begin to understand her nature within, both within the male and the female, we can start getting the hints that are being thrown at us constantly. So the hints from heaven and earth and very often hell. So here we are. We are exploring the fairy tale of Ash Girl, which is the Grimm's version of Cinderella. So it's got a whole different motif. And as discussed before, and if you go back and listen to the fairy tale code, you begin to see that there are patterns to fairy tales. And this is what makes them universal. They carry a certain pattern. And then depending on what your culture is and what the fashions are, we add those details. But this story of Cinderella, which I was rudely stopped. I was finishing up reading the fairy tale, and then time got in the way. It's always something time, okay? So in this Cinderella, but then I stopped off, don't remember exactly, but this Cinderella, she addresses the hazel tree with the following words: "Little tree, jiggle yourself and shake yourself, scatter gold and silver over me." And a beautiful gold and silver dress appears off, and Cinderella goes off to the ball. This event happens 3 days running, and the final day, Cinderella is given solid gold slippers as well. Each time she dances the whole night with the prince and runs off before he can find out who she is. The second night, the prince tracks her through to the garden, but then he cannot find her. And the third night, he puts pitch on the palace steps. Smart prince, this guy's active, okay. He's got some major swagger, this prince does. And on her way out, Cinderella leaves one of her gold slippers sticking to the pitch. And then the next day, the prince returns to her house and tries to slip her on each of the two sisters. Catch this one now, the stepsisters. Ouch. They cut off part of their feet to fit into the slipper. Doesn't that happen in reality? People cut off part of their stand in life or cut off nasty aspects of themselves thinking that nobody will notice, okay? But the prince is riding away with the first one and then with the other, so he falls for it. But then the hazel bush calls the prince's attention to the blood on the shoe, and he goes back and he finds Cinderella and marries her, while the stepsisters have their eyes pecked out by pigeons. Well, you know, we all have bad days. What can we do? So, what are we going to do here? The way that I want to look at this particular fairy tale, and as there can be many, many, many interpretations, and that's why they are universal and thousands of years older. So this fairy tale, I want to look at it from the perspective of spiritual and soul development. The Ash Girl being the soul in exile, and the journey to her wholeness. In this particular interpretation, we're going to consider the prince as God, her journey back to the royal wedding within. Remember, all fairy tales, everything that goes on in a fairy tale, just like everything that goes on in a dream, is an aspect of, in this case, one figure called Ash Girl or Cinderella. Or if it's in the dream, it's an aspect of ourselves. Psyche will pick traits about a person that to demonstrate very clearly how annoying we can all be. So in this one, what we are looking at in this journey of Ash Girl, okay, that it's one of the early stories of the soul's transformation, and to connect it with whether it be Gnostic or Egyptian or Sumerian. So it's the story of the soul. The story of the soul is in bondage to a cruel stepmother, the mysteries of her transformation, and the help of the true mother, or the godmother, or the fairy mother, or, and in this case, the hazel tree, and the quest for the prince to find the bride, and finally celebrate the royal marriage. So that's what we are going to be looking at. How does this happen inside of us? Well, one of the interesting things about, again, the Ash Girl, Cinderella, loses her mother. Her mother dies. So there the motif begins with, well, she's not completely an orphan. She has a father who does help a little bit, but basically it's between her and the evil stepmother and the ever so evil, envious sisters. So we have the three females, Cinderella making the fourth. Anytime we have a 4, we know we're dealing with wholeness, because 4 is the number of wholeness. So it's like, uh-oh, dun, 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 dun. The plot begins. In this case, Ash Girl is very, very different than the innocent Psyche, and certainly the ever so innocent Snow White, because she doesn't choose innocence. See, when we choose innocence, or we fall into the archetype of the orphan or the innocent, we wait to be rescued and never want to see evil or not so good or the shadow side of ourselves or others. And so we cause a lot of havoc in this kind of innocence. Because if it's an orphan story or an orphan's fairy tale, it's about powerlessness. And it's about a yearning to return to the primal kind of innocence, the innocence that is childlike and needs to be cared for by the all-loving mother or father figure. So, in this case, Ash Girl realizes she has some strength in her, as we all do. You can choose to be the orphan, and you can choose to wait to be rescued, to be saved by heaven and earth, or the prince, or whomever we want to be saved by, or the mother coming back from the dead. But this story, the soul knows, Ash Girl as the soul knows. It's got an active principle, because Ash Girl, when the father says, "Yo, I'm going to the feast, I'm going to the fair," she asks for something. Asks for a branch of the tree, and of course it's the tree of life. And she asks for it. Specifically, it winds up being a hazel tree, which is used in Druidic magic. It's the branch of prophecy and magic. But we'll get to that a little later. Right now, we're dealing with, again, the stepmother is cruel and unkind. So when we have a mother complex, or we're working through, remember, the mother can be the all-giving, life-giving, or she could be the death-giving mother. So that's the archetypes. Archetypes do not have personalities. They really don't care about, that they're a force. And that's what they do. And when this force, whatever, it's like you can't appease it. You can't trick it. You got to work with it. So if you're having a day where, the death mother is around, she's taking something away. It's a teaching. She's showing you your strength, that you will get through this. Think of something. It's like the loving mother who says, "Hey, I told you how to do this like 3 times. Now move it. And, of course, the first time we don't do it quite as well, but eventually. And that's how the death mother or the task-giving mother, in some ways, is also carrying the golden mother because she's giving you your own strength. Do the work. Do your homework. Because then you'll know your own strength for all of eternity. Always remember that. No matter what you're going through, and no matter what you're becoming, and no matter what you're discovering, shadow or light, once learned, it's part of the DNA for eternity. So it's worth it. Nobody's saying to not bitch and scream and yell along the way, but keep doing your homework. Because eventually you will break through. So we see 3. 3 is always powerful in storytelling. It's one of the primal numbers. It's also a number in alchemy. It's the number of creation. Of the opposites, then the third factor happens. Put 2 together, you're about, a third factor will take place. It's the number. It has a lot to do with magic. It's a creative number. So in this case, Ash Girl is stuck with having to do, in a way, the same task that Psyche had to do. The stepmother hands her, she wants to go to the ball, all right, and the sisters, everybody's getting dressed, the mother's getting dressed, they're having a great time. She asks to go, and the mother doesn't say that she can't go. She just gives her an impossible task. But before that happens, if you will remember from last week, one of the things before the ball episode, which is the turning point when Cinderella takes up, she does the task, and therefore, when she does the task, she knows that she has a right to go to the ball. So when we've done our homework and we have fulfilled our task, and we know, or at least hint at, what we have earned, not entitled. There's no entitlement going on here. So the Ash Girl doesn't have that. She does her work. But what she began to work with was when she asked for this branch. And when the father came back with the branch, she planted it. Planting our own ideas. We plant a branch of a tree, or a branch of reality, or the tree of life. It's beauty, whatever it might be, that we're on this branch, okay? And so the soul knows what to plant and what to save and what to put into Mother Earth and what to put into the underworld. And the way that Cinderella or Ash Girl tends to this branch is through her tears. Remember, tears are the holy water of your body. They wash away. They heal. So never be ashamed of a good cry, or a long cry, or letting the body cry as long as it needs to. Because it's purifying. Water and salt always purify, and that's what tears are made out of. You know, the salt is the burning experience. Like, ouch, that really hurts. That stings. What are they doing that for? Well, then you know. And then the water comes and starts washing it away because it's a transformational image. So, and that's what fairy tales are about. They're about symbolic stories, in this case, of the soul's transformation. So when the father, how the branch happens, so he goes off, right? And she's left with a you-know-who, But when he comes back, at first it doesn't happen. He doesn't find what she's looking for. But a branch hits him on his hat. You know, the hat is kind of in a sense like the crown, and that's how he finds this little branch. So in fairy tales, you start, as in life, there is always, if we know what we're looking at, there's always some type of magic. There is the resolution is always in the problem if we start to look around, or if we know a little bit about symbolism, or we ask for dreams at night to help us, and then really, really work on that. They're not going to give it to you in 1, 2, 3. They're going to give you in a symbolic form, because that is what is universal. Symbols are a universal language, as is music. Music is the sound of words we have not created yet. That's why we swoon, we feel. God, we don't have a word for that. We have a sound for it. We have no word for it. So that's also when music will bring up such emotion, whether it's joy or sadness or merriment. It always does something. We are all affected, or just annoyance. We don't like the sound. It's like, go away, you're annoying me. So in the Grimm's tale, when the father attends the fair, right? So no, what's attending the fair? The fair would be, in a sense, a symbol of wholeness. So he's going out into the world, and he's finding this gathering place, the collective place where everybody kind of comes together and gossips and talks and finds out things, all right? So the father, of course, is an aspect of Ash Girl. It's the ego. And the sisters, which starts to show you the difference between Ash Girl and the sisters, or the sisters within ourselves, okay? So one requests fine clothes, while the other names pearls and jewels. And then he asks Cinderella. So that's the aspect of us, okay, that, you know, we want to be all purdied up, which, you know, I go for because I'm Venus possessed. I think that's wonderful. But if I was in this predicament, I think I'd go along with Ash Girl and get the magic wand, okay? So that's the part of us that feels like, well, if I really just looked pretty, or if I was a certain age, or a certain weight, or a certain something or other, whatever that is, you know, there I would be whole, I would get the prince, I would not be in the suffering situation. Remember, Cinderella is a suffering kind of female Christ figure. And we all have that in us. We can see the soul as a female Christ image within us, that we suffer again to be transformed. The suffering does not last. I mean, we can belabor it by our ignorance or our refusal or wanting to stay innocent. No, why is this happening to me? I'm such a good person. Bad things always happen. Well, you're not paying attention. It's not a matter of good or bad. It's just saying, wait a sec, I am in the middle. Whose fairy tale am I in? And what do I need to do? What attitude do I need? What action do I need to see this from a different perspective, and then I can get to the next step? You may not totally get to the ball yet, but you will get to the next step. So right here we see in the Ash Girl, we're seeing three different, well, we've got the evil stepmother, everybody knows that story. And then we've got the wicked sisters, which also, you know, the wicked sisters can be the negative side of the feminine. You know, which is which. The negative feminine is the one that, you know, just says, oh, you're too ugly to sing a song or write a book or dance a dance. Other people can do that. Your wacko sisters can do that, but you can't. Or, well, why should I try if I'm not going to make money? That's always a beaut. Why should I use my creativity if I can't make money at it? Or, when envy is coming at you, and the envious person, of course, this is usually unconscious because they really think they're being helpful, and they'll say, and you'll say, I am going to take singing lessons. And they say, can you make money at that? That's the kiss of death. Because then we go like, well, no, I just thought, you want to sing because that's how your prayers get to heaven, and you want to dance because that delights the divine, and you want to do whatever creative act you want to do, whether you're planting roses in the desert or you're rescuing animals, whatever it is you're doing, it delights the divine. That's why you do it. The money may come in another way, but it will come. So never, ever, ever fall for that one, because it's the economy of the soul. It's the goldenness of the soul. So you may have to work at something else for gain, but never, never, even if you do it 5 minutes a day, give up or betray your gifts. They're gifts, and gifts go away. And it may take you 5 more lifetimes to get it back. So do it in secret, sing in the bathroom, rescue whatever you want, okay? But do your gift. Now, what's so interesting about Ash Girl is that she works. So, yes, she gets these impossible tasks, and it's like, oh, man, can't we just go directly to the ball? No. Ash Girl knows something, that through work, she's learning a skill. And even though it's through oppression, she's learning to care for others. So Ash Girl don't give a shit. She's learning. And when we learn to care for others, particularly cranky people, okay, or people who are just it's a terrible, terrible thing to be filled with envy. Oh my God, they suffer. Everything they see is an attack on them. Okay, but Ash Girl is developing skills, survival skills, tedious tasks, and she knows intuitively that she has the right to get help from heaven. Heaven cannot intervene, angels cannot intervene, ancestors cannot intervene, the divine cannot intervene unless invited in. Which is why it's so interesting, usually at the 11th hour, we're screaming and on our knees, and that's when we say the real prayer. That, and it's not like, why do I have to get down to this? Because that's the only time you're real. You're bypass the ego. You're totally strung out. There are no defenses. Your pain is truly, truly real and authentic. You're not fighting it anymore. And then the prayer gets answered. Because that's the way we're supposed to pray. With the deep humility. I am human, and without the assistance of the heavenly bodies, I'm not making it. But when the ego, now we need an ego, but not when we're praying. Got to give it up. Give it up and give it over. So Cinderella knows this. And that's what's very different about this fairy tale. She's not a victim. She's going to work, she's going to learn her skills, and each little skill she's going to use to help herself. She's not just asking, well, there is no fairy godmother in this fairy tale, in the Grimm's tale. So with her, she begins to understand that through her, and the soul understands this, that through suffering, through conscious suffering, not just, running around suffering and belaboring and all suffering has meaning. And that's the work of any spiritual work or any Jungian work, dream work. We're trying to find the meaning. And the meaning isn't a justification. A meaning is not, what goes around comes around. That's not a fucking meaning. I could say I feel intensely about that one, obviously. What it is about is that in my journey, I will find what the meaning is to me. What is the hints? What am I being told here? Don't write people off with some ditty. They are in the middle of a great story that the soul is going through. And if we just say something like, what goes around comes around, we're writing them off. And we say it with authority, but it really has no empathy. It has no compassion. And it definitely has no wisdom. Because in which way will this return? Well, it depends. The law of karma is the law of action and reaction. So Ash Girl gets to work when she realizes, holy moly, how am I ever going to get this job done? How can I sort these lentils? She remembers the birds, the little birds that now live on the tree that's growing in her garden. I mean, that's the Song of Songs from the Bible right there. The tree that grows. And the tree is a very powerful image in alchemy because the roots of the soul go to the center of the earth and the branches to heaven. And so the earth is where we draw the wisdom from. And that's part of what is happening. She has built, with her own hands and her own insight, this tree is growing. And there is a tree growing for all of us that we don't know about. And then we turn around and we go on the journey. And one day we find the tree. It's a very interesting exercise. Draw a tree. And just give it your all. It can be any color, any way, anything, because the tree represents the true self. So let's say if somebody draws a tree, but they just there's no roots, then when you look at that, you go like, okay, this person isn't rooted. They don't know that there's something beneath them that's going to nourish them. Because if a tree doesn't have any roots, it's fallen over, okay? Or if it has wounds in it. So the way that the tree is drawn tells you so much about the person, about their psyche, where their wounds are. It's just amazing just by drawing a tree. So draw a tree. Just let it happen, or draw it with your opposite hand. And then you'll start to see, oh, look at that big mark over there. Oh, let me see, that's about the age 7. I got a boo-boo there. So do that, and if you wish, and have a fabulous weekend, and I will be back for more stories of the Ash Girl and insights about your soul, your little Ash Girl within, who's awesome. Bye. Oh, go on my website, LorraineNeithardt.com, or sign up for Blog Talk Radio, or what's the other thing? Oh, Facebook. Yeah, Facebook. Okay, bye-bye.
Progressive brings you Flowetry with Flo.
When Flo flows, she flows in the know. Mind ruminates the race. Shown them all, I heed the call. Seeing the rest, I choose the best. Sometimes it's ours, sometimes it's not. When the fox walks, is it called a fox trot? That's a real question.
Compare Progressive direct rates with competitors' rates. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.